Ladies and gentlemen from across our wonderful corn-fueled state, a public service announcement. Tomorrow will mark the day on the calendar with the highest average blood pressure amidst our 99 counties, probably some of the highest caloric intakes outside of Thanksgiving and Christmas, and certainly it marks a yearly high point for the amount of alcohol consumed across our favorite state. Prepare your smokers, cornhole boards, cases of beer, pork butts, and make sure you've got enough ice because tomorrow is the one and only annual Cy-Hawk football game. And can we get more people to lobby for having the Cy-Hawk game be made a state holiday? Find me a day on the calendar that means more to Iowans. It can't be done. The Hate Week excitement has been building pressure like a water heater with a bad valve. It all comes down to tomorrow on the gridiron at that ugly brick pile that the team out east named Kinnick Stadium. Today is Friday, September 6th. I'm Matt Menson, and welcome to the Cornfield Sports Pod. No Blake on the show today. It's going to be a solo one. Blake is currently busy at Principal Park in Des Moines. They got the Savannah Bananas down there right now. He's helping with the production for that. So you get to deal with me and me alone for the show today. And we're going to open this up. We're going to talk about last week's football game because, the analysis of that one is going to play real big into how we go about Cy-Hawk here this coming week. So let's talk about that North Dakota game here. 21-3 win. Would have liked to see it go better, but my goodness, I loved how the game started in the first 38 seconds. It was an electric beginning of the game. 54-yard pass, to Jaylin Noel, followed immediately by a 21-yard touchdown pass to Jayden Higgins. That's good for a 75-yard drive in less than a minute. And you would think something like that would set the tone for the game. You would think that when plays like that happen in rapid succession like that to open the game, you would think, oh, it's going to be one of those games where you're just going to absolutely steamroll the other team, blow them out of the water, and maybe make a coach or two cry on the bus ride home. That game did not go that way at all because following the initial drive, it was still lopsided-ish, but it was more of a slugfest that was lopsided. And some of that is we have reasons for concerns on defense at the linebacking spot. Early in the game, Caleb Bacon appeared to suffer a leg injury during the game that threatens to keep him out potentially for the whole season. I see it as likely to be the whole season. The reasons for optimism, the staff kind of say they exist, but I don't see him, not after watching that injury. Bacon did get surgery on that lower leg. Currently, there is no timetable at all for his return. And like I said, staff hopes that he's able to return by season's end, but that comes across to me right now more like wishful thinking than any serious expectation of him actually coming back into the 2024 Iowa State football season and returning, in the home stretch where, we're going to be competing against, teams like K-State. Hopefully we'd be lucky enough to make the Big 12 championship bowl game, things like that. I just don't see Bacon being back for that. But for the remainder of that game against North Dakota, Jack Sadowski V and Zach Lovett filled in. They're not Caleb Bacon, that's for certain. Deep would not be a good way to describe the linebacking core right now. And what the result of that was stopping the run became a consistent issue over the course of that game. We struggled mightily to fill gaps. North Dakota quarterback Simon Romfo was the team's second leading rusher with 44 yards, off of QB scrambles. And all too often, he was left with open field in front of him when he did scramble because we did not spy him for the entirety of the game, a tactic that I fear if we continue into Big 12 play will have disastrous consequences. The way we approach defending the run game, especially the QB run, which is popular in the Big 12, needs to be updated. Because as good as our 3-3-5 defense has been since Campbell has been here, this defense that John Haycock has been running for his entire time as our defensive coordinator has depended on having quality Mike linebackers, going back to Joel Lanning. You take a look at some other solid linebackers that we've had too that have helped to benefit this. Marcel Spears, Mike Rose, Orion Vance. Now we've got Caleb Bacon. Right now, with Caleb Bacon being out, presumably for the season, we don't necessarily have that Mike linebacker, which is it's gonna cause us some issues. And what ended up happening in the game against North Dakota was that UND as a whole combined for 174 rush yards, which is way too many to be allowing against an FCS team. And we, on our own, struggled to get a serious ground game going. Abu Sama left the game after only 5 attempts and 36 yards. So Abu was actually running good, but because he doesn't need much of a hole. He's elusive enough to slip through some pretty small holes, but no other running back on our roster eclipsed 3.5 yards per rush, which leads me to some concerns about, okay, Abu was able to be slippery against an FCS defensive line where our other running backs were failing even against that, and our offensive line wasn't able to open up big enough holes for any old running back to get through. This may present some issues here tomorrow against better competition. But on the bright side here, Rocco showed consistency in the air attack over the course of the game. Across the game, he completed 13 out of 13 passes that were intended for Jaylin, Noel, and for Jayden Higgins. Overall, he was 20 for 26. And outside of that game-opening drive, Rocco still threw for 10.7 yards per pass. Solid performance from him. Now, granted, that was against a defense whose secondary could not keep up with the speed and physicality of Noel and Higgins. But to be honest, I'm not sure that that's going to be drastically different next week. It will be different. Or I shouldn't say next week. I should say tomorrow. But like we're still going to have size advantage against guys like Castro tomorrow. So I think we can exploit that and still get some of the same kinds of advantages that we did have against the UND secondary. And our secondary played extraordinarily well, severely limiting the ability of the North Dakota receiving corps. Only Bo Belquist was able to haul in more than 2 receptions for the Fighting Hawks. He tallied 6 total that he hauled in. And if you subtract the 34-yard outlier that was caught by Isaiah Smith, the North Dakota running back, UND averaged only 5.4 yards per reception, which is incredibly good pass defense from the Cyclones. And that's mostly a result of the 5 guys in our secondary. Of course, the linebackers play a role in that too. So it's not like Sadowski and Lovett was all bad from the linebacking spot. They just left something to be desired in terms of stopping the run. But let's take a look at what all that means here for the game tomorrow. The team out east is undoubtedly a more formidable opponent than North Dakota. That goes without saying, but I'm saying it anyway because it's week 1. You get excited. You get high on yourself because you beat a team that you knew you were going to beat, and you had a high margin of victory. So you think you look good, but now it's time to go take that to the proving grounds here. And the way we performed against an FCS opponent was not as good as the way they performed against their FCS opponent. They do have more reason to be confident going into the game after their 40-0 blowout of Illinois State. Now, the consolation of this is that Illinois State is actually a considerably worse FCS squad than North Dakota. However, when we're talking about multiple orders of magnitude in size and prestige of the Power Four in regards to the FCS, because in between those two, you've also got G5. So when you're talking about that kind of power scaling, it should, for the most part, negate any ability to compare results based on margin of victory alone. You kind of have to go to the eye test. Now, you're going to find some exceptions to that. The best of the best FCS schools are going to put up fights against even quality FBS teams. South Dakota State was a good example of that. They did not, win against Oklahoma State, but they put up a decent fight. Now, the team out east last week threw 3 touchdowns to wide receivers, which is the same number as they have in the last 2 seasons or something like that. It's a ridiculous stat. Now, the way they play, I consider it unlikely that anything like that will happen this week, considering that the team out east has to play against a secondary that's worth its salt, and they're not running roughshod on junior varsity Joe and the Get Along gang like they were last week, playing that, JV team from across the Mississippi River. And it also stands to reason that with Kirk back on the sidelines, that the air game from the team out east will be significantly reduced. Remember, Ferentz was on suspension last week. So he's not the one that's going to be, he wasn't giving instructions to the OC in the same capacity that he would be tomorrow. And one of the things that's been consistent under the Kirk Ferentz tenure at the team out east is that the run game is absolutely emphasized over the pass game, pretty much to a fault. That's been very consistent for the entire time they've been there. The last few years, lots of people have decided to place the blame on Brian Ferentz because he's the OC, so technically he's the one making the calls. But before Brian, it was the same problem, and the guy before him, and it's been that way for Ferentz's entire tenure there. So yeah, tell me it's a coincidence that they won by 40 and threw for more than 17.5 yards to receivers on the game that he was gone. So with Ferentz being back on the sidelines, I fully expect that alone will hamper the team out east's pass game. Add into that the fact that they have to go up against serious defenders in the Iowa State secondary. Their pass game will fall back off to where we would normally expect it to be. It does stand to reason that the team out east will continue to rely heavily on that ground attack against us, seeing as our secondary has proven to be much stronger in the pass game than our boys in the trenches, and the linebacking core have been, especially with that run game against North Dakota. And beyond that, it stands to reason their offensive line will have even more success against their offensive line will have more success than UND did against us in that run block, not only because they're a power school with more resources to recruit and to develop lines, but because that's a position that they actually routinely develop NFL talent at. That's something that they do. That's what they do there is they build good O-lines. So that lack of having Caleb Bacon in the game means that our best run stopper in the linebacking core is gone, leaving a lot of potential gaps to be exploited by the team out east. Now, the spread on this game, team out east, -3, over under is 35.5. That's from FanDuel as of 1:21 p.m. yesterday. That might be changed by now. I've got the team out east covering, and I've got under 35.5. My score prediction on this one: team out east 17, us 13. Blake's got his prediction submitted here as well. Team out east, he's got covering. He actually predicted the over, and it's kind of unfortunate that he's not sitting right next to me for me to make fun of him for that one, because his scoring that he's got listed here is just ridiculous. He's got the team out east winning 32-17. I don't know how he expects them to hit the weird number of 32. But maybe one of y'all that's watching on YouTube drop some sort of mathematical explanation in the comments, or tweet it at C Sports Pod or something. But this one's going to be a 2:30 kickoff on CBS tomorrow. This will be the first time, I believe, that Iowa State has ever played a football game on CBS. I don't believe that has happened at any point in the past, considering the Big 12 and the Big 8 before them never had a broadcasting deal with CBS. Theirs was always ESPN-based, and then recently, as Fox has gotten more and more involved in the collegiate game, Fox has been getting larger and larger stakes of the Big 12 as well. Volleyball, let's talk a little bit of volleyball here. Actually, we have a lot of volleyball to talk about, considering they played 3 games in the last week, and we got a few more here in the next week. But the UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas Invite. They played 2 games out there. It went okay-ish. We were certainly expecting better. That's the best way to put it. Is we expected better out of Iowa State's performance, out of the UNLV Invite. Volleyball's already got a loss on the season, which they really shouldn't be having right now, considering the opponents that they've played. In that game against Pacific, they did win it in 5 sets, but they fought off a run from Pacific late that could have, that if Pacific had won the 5th set, it would have been a reverse sweep. So yeah, we started off looking strong-ish. It's a good look to win the first 2 sets of a match, and it makes you look kind of dominant, and then you start to zoom in and you see the details, and it shows a significantly less dominant performance, especially in set 2, where we managed to win the set despite hitting only 176. It was not great. Sets 3 and 4 were where the game got real ugly for the Cyclones. We did not hit above 200 in either set, and only 0.091 in set 4. Between those 2 sets, the Cyclones had a total of 16 attack errors. They had 9 in the 3rd and 7 in the 4th, or maybe it was vice versa. I believe that's what it was, though. It was 9 in the 3rd, 7 in the 4th. But that's only across 2 sets. You could have combined any 3 of Pacific's sets. It doesn't matter which 3 you choose. You can throw darts at a dartboard to pick them. And you wouldn't reach 16 attack errors. So they were doing a better job of avoiding errors than we were consistently across that game, until you got to the 5th set, when we only had 1 error. But if you look at the team stats across the game without a set-by-set breakdown, you would expect a more dominant performance, because we won every major metric except one. Points we won 81-70, kills we won 68-60, aces 5-4, blocks 8-6, assists was the one we tied, that was 54 apiece, and then digs we outdug them 69-66. But we struggled mightily to deal with two of Pacific's hitters, Alexa Edwards and Darina Kumanova. They rattled off 17 and 16 kills, respectively, which is more than we should be allowing any hitter from a team that most fans of college sports have never heard of. So that was a less than optimal way to start the season against a team that is not of the caliber where we should be allowing multiple players to get that many hits, where we should not be allowing them to take us to 5 sets, let alone almost pull off a reverse sweep. We should have swept them, taken care of business, move on to the next day. And then it was a lot of the same problems that we had against Pacific came up in the game at UNLV. Only this time it ended up playing out to UNLV's favor and added our first loss on the year. But set-to-set inconsistency was just a major, major issue across this game. Notice the lack of continuity when I'm describing the difference in these sets here. Sets 1, 3, and 5, defense was strong. In 2 and 4, our defense was extraordinarily weak, allowing 400 hitting and 356 hitting rates in those 2 sets. Allowing 400 hitting is atrociously bad defense. And our offense never got particularly strong throughout the entire game, only eclipsing 300 hitting during set 3, with set 5 being a complete offensive collapse, hitting a measly 0.037. That's the kind of stuff that as you go through the season, our offense is going to have to improve. And one of the things that I noticed during the UNLV invite here, it looked to me like they were trying to avoid relying very much on Nayeli, Gonzalez, and Maya Duckworth. And I think we do need to rely on them a little bit more. We should be playing to our strengths because that's what's going to win us games when we start getting into the intensity of Big 12 play. And that was another one, though. If you break down the full game box score against UNLV, we either win or tie in every single category, some very dominantly, and yet we lose the game because inconsistency killed us. And yeah, the sets we won, we were dominant in, but the sets that we lost, they were not as dominant, but they were strong enough to be able to take more sets without offsetting the total stats. But points, we outscored them 82-73. Kills, that was even 59 apiece. Aces, 7-6 in our favor. Blocks, this one was a huge, huge discrepancy. Stuff like this should be momentum swingers for us. It was not. We outblocked them 16-8. Assists, we had 51 apiece. Digs, we outdug them 66-63. So that one's not a huge discrepancy, but it's there. But of course, between the two games, the numbers can only tell so much of the story. Watching the game, it just looked like the team was kind of knocking the rust off and having a hard time getting into gear. Kind of like if you pull your old or your grandpa's old Pontiac out of his shed. It's been sitting there untouched for the last decade, but like he took good care of it. It wasn't a beater car or anything like that. It still runs, but there's plenty of hiccups along the way. Movement on the floor didn't always look the smoothest. Lateral movement, I just thought seemed kind of slow at times. There was a couple times I noticed that we had all 6 players between the 10-foot line and the net while the ball was on the other side of the net, Pacific's or UNLV's. Needless to say, that creates a massive gap in the back where opposing attackers can just drop the ball at will on us. If they can kill it, if they can get a kill with an overpass, it's going to be a problem. Now, they didn't do that, but there were a couple instances where they certainly could have. And one of the things that's been annoying me personally a little bit, the decision to keep Brooke Stonestreet out of that starting libero spot, it seems like it's a common talking point right now among the ISU volleyball fans. Why aren't we starting her? And it's not a knock on Rachel Van Gorp. Van Gorp's been performing well here to start the season. And she acquired 19 digs in each game in Vegas, but you do have to account for the fact that both of those matches were 5 sets, so it dilutes those numbers on a per set basis a little bit. And you also got to add to that, Stonestreet is, in my opinion, the best returning libero in the Big 12 Conference. And as a team, she's the kind of asset that we need to be leaning on more heavily. She's good. And we know what she's capable of. We know she's consistent. And when you're going through the eye test, as you're watching the game, sometimes you'll see those dig chances that get missed. And I'm like, Brooke would have got that. And I think that there's been too many times that I've been saying that over the course of the previous couple games here that I want to say Brooke back in the starting lineup as our libero, and move Van Gorp to a DS. Definitely still give her playing time. She's earned playing time as a DS, but I'm not quite sure that she's ready to be a starting libero, especially considering she was not even a libero in high school. She did not start playing libero until she got to Iowa State. Which does worry me a little bit. That's one of the things that you're going to get from Brooke is reliability. That's something you just can't measure from a freshman at the beginning of the season, especially one who hasn't been playing the position before. And the other thing, too, is as far as depth chart type stuff goes, one of the things I noticed during the spring season as well, and I talked about this on an episode back in the spring, Paula Kreschlak's development has narrowed the skill gap considerably between her and Brooke. Paula's developed fast. She's developed real fast. And I had even talked in the spring about, is there a chance that maybe Paula actually does come for Brooke's starting job? I was talking about that as an off chance. I didn't think Brooke was actually going to lose a starting job. And if she would have, I would have thought it would have been to Paula, not Van Gorp, not an incoming freshman who hasn't even played the position before. But like I said, it's not a knock on Van Gorp. She's done a good job so far. I'm just concerned about consistency right now. How long can she keep it up? Because we have no metric by which we can tell that right now. And I really don't think that we're going to get to see that until we face some tougher opponents with better attackers. Yesterday, the Cyclone Invitational began for their third game in the last 7 days. And this one was the Iowa State Cyclones that we expected coming into the season. As we returned 10 players, brought in, 2 from the transfer portal, and only have 3 freshmen that are brand new to the team here. We swept Toledo. It knocked Toledo from the list of unbeatens as they fall to 3-1 on the season, and lifts Iowa State to 2-1 on the season. The game was one of dominant runs for the Cyclones, and I can't really emphasize the word dominant enough there. The runs, when Iowa State went on a run, Toledo was cooked. Toledo could not match our runs in terms of magnitude or in quantity. The most adversity that the Cyclones really faced during the entire match was at the very beginning of set 1, where Toledo stormed out to a 6-point lead. And after that, they fizzled out, allowing ISU to climb back, tie the set at 18, then fire off a 7-2 run to end the set just in a dominant fashion. Set two gave us the longest sequence of do or die situations that the Cyclones have faced yet this season, where after Toledo tied the set with them at 20 points, 5 more ties followed after that, including on Toledo's only set point, where they were up 24-23. The Rockets were unable to secure that 25th point, even as they had the ISU defense scrambling over themselves merely to get the ball over the net multiple times, sending multiple free balls over for the Cyclones. And Toledo was unable to capitalize. And we had good defense at the net. Not every block is a recorded block because you don't always score, but Morgan Brandt in particular had a big one that allowed our defense to actually fully get reset. And from there, that was when the momentum of that point turned toward Iowa State. And then after that, the momentum of the set swung towards the Cyclones after earning that point off the long rally. And then from there, after a couple more set points, the Cyclones did take the set. Set 3 was just a no-doubter. There's not that much to write home about this one. There's not that kind of crazy excitement. It was just the perfect way to end the home opener, though. We carried momentum right over from set 2, stormed out 6-0 right out of the gate, and eventually leading that one to claiming the set by 8 points. Defense over the course of the game, phenomenal for the Cyclones. Toledo's best set, the Rockets, hit 0.042. Yeah, you heard me correctly. That was their best set. The biggest issue for the Cyclones' defense over the course of the game was actually in the serve receive. Far too many were watched as they landed on or very close to the line. Serves where there's no reason to be confident that they're going to be out of bounds. They're ones that, when in doubt, play it out. Receive the serve and see what's going to happen. Don't chance it. But this did allow Toledo their only win in the metrics against ISU the whole game, and they hit 8 aces to our 7 as a result of that. The Cyclone offense did still leave some things to be desired. Over the course of the match, we only hit 206 and didn't eclipse 300 in any particular set. So there's certainly room for improvement. Yes, a sweep over a team you've at least heard of is good, but in order to have the kind of broad success that we would like to have in Big 12 play, our offense is going to have to improve and be putting up better numbers against these smaller teams. But today, we will be finally getting to take our chances against another power school. First serve will be at approximately 6:30 versus Wake Forest. I say approximately because that will be following another game in Hilton Coliseum between Toledo and Illinois. Wake Forest is a bit of a wild card to predict. Their season has started in a tumultuous, very difficult to explain sort of manner. They have a pair of respectable wins. One's against West Virginia. One of them's a sweep against Navy. But they also have a disastrous loss where they actually got swept by Hofstra on their own home floor. So it's which version of Wake Forest are we even going to see today? Are we going to see the version that won against West Virginia in 5 sets, which is still probably a team that we can beat? Are we going to see the team that swept Navy, who I guess doesn't really have that good of a volleyball team, but sweeping anybody is somewhat good? Or are we going to get the team that got swept by Hofstra and beat them 25-7 in 3 consecutive sets? Now, that inconsistency could actually make them difficult to prepare for. Because, let's think about this. The Hofstra film might be kind of useless. So, if they have a game where they're playing to their capabilities, it's going to be better than what we're prepared for with how we play against them. Now, I still think we can beat them. The more interesting matchup here of the Cyclone Invite is tomorrow at 4 versus Illinois. Illinois has been a dangerous team against ISU in the past. They're 5-1 historically, and they have never lost in Hilton Coliseum before. Illinois' only historical loss against the Clones came over a decade ago, and that game was on the Illini's home floor. And the Illini they're not the same caliber of team that the NCAA volleyball world was looking at a decade ago when they were making multiple deep NCAA tournament runs. It was, 2018 when they made their Final Four run. Now you can't even find them getting votes in the AVCA rankings anymore. But then again, neither are we after the way we just performed in Vegas. So maybe we're a bit more on par than either team would like to think. ISU will also be playing with the disadvantage of a Hilton Coliseum that is far emptier than normal for volleyball on Saturday, considering that Cyhawk football is on the same day. And then, of course, Wednesday, September 11th at Hilton Coliseum. Cyhawk. Cyclone Nation. If you have plans outside of that game, you don't anymore. You're coming to Hilton Coliseum to watch us curb stomp the team out east because we have something to prove after how much it took to secure the W in Coralville last year. Mini history lesson here. And I guess, yeah, it's history because it's in the past, so we can call it history. We had to pull off the reverse sweep last year at Extreme Arena in order to claim the W for the Cyhawk series. And that was a game where, in order to get that W, we saw the best of fourth set Kirsten so far, hopefully. I mean, she's been developing really well, so maybe we can get an even more powerful fourth set Kirsten. I don't know what it is about her in the fourth set, but man, does she come alive in a fourth set. And some swings from Maya Duckworth that were, powerful enough to put the fear of God in the Team Out East roster late in the game last year. Now, such drama should not be necessary to deal with them. They routinely compete to be the Big Ten's worst team. They are a bottom of the barrel, picking up scraps, bottom feeder in that league. We should be able to sweep them and sweep them soundly on our home floor in Hilton Coliseum with the crowd fully behind them. And then that leads us to a little bit of news in terms of Big 12 conference realignment. The rumor mill had been swirling around about some debates within the conference regarding adding UConn as a non-football member for the next 6 years, 7 years. And then adding them for football after that, presuming that they would make enough investment into their football program beforehand. It didn't really make any sense that was going to happen because where were they going to get if they were going to be a non-football member for 7 years, where were they going to get the money to invest in their football program? There was no real sense in that plan anyway. And without the media rights being split between football and everything else, it would have caused just a giant hairy mess in the conference media grant of rights contract. So it makes more sense right now to just not add them. Conversations regarding adding UConn as a member of the conference have been put on hold. So UConn will not be getting added as a member of the Big 12 Conference in the near future. Maybe that means that they can divert a little bit more attention possibly into adding Clemson and Florida State. I kind of doubt that we're going to be hearing any news from that for a while now that football season is officially up and going. but you never know. Realignment seems to get weirder every time it happens, so maybe that's the next logical step. Anyway, follow the Cornfield Sports Pod on Twitter at CSportsPod. You can find me at SFMattISU. If Blake was here, he'd be telling you to find him at BlakeAttack1846. Tap the follow button on Spotify, the plus button on Apple, subscribe to us on YouTube and on Rumble. For Blake Peterson, I'm Matt Menson, and this has been the Cornfield Sports Pod.